Dip myself. All
Oh,
right.
there you are.
Yeah.
I see.
All right. We are recording, and I guess it's time to get started.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the last RCOS meeting of the semester. Um, we're going to start with some announcements. Then we'll list the one remaining workshop this semester. It's on May 3rd. Then we will have a guest speaker who is joined us today. And then we'll do attendance, talk about what the final requirements and assignments are for the semester, and then presentations. So let's get started with those announcements.
So this is the last day for all of these, I believe. Call for code. Well, call for code goes on for a while, but this is the last. This is the last day of call for code month from IBM. You know, they have some great open source projects. They're doing a lot of support. You know, if you're interested, check it out. The Center for Research and Open Source, I think their deadline for applications for this center for this summer are today. So if you're thinking about doing research, I think that's UCSD or Santa Cruz UCSC. Um, and then all things open, their call for papers ends today. So all of those are available. They're covered more in previous meetings, so we will just move on from there. If you're interested, please do something quickly.
All right, next up we've got upcoming workshops. So this is probably most likely the last workshop of the semester. So if you are at all missing workshops, this is the one you got to go to. So we've got test racks and stuff with LSB. No idea what the other stuff is, but it's probably something interesting. So definitely check that out on May 3rd at 1 p.m. if you are interested in stuff and test racks.
Okay, so we wanted to get a few quick announcements out of the way before we introduced our featured guest. Alan Tucker is the author of Client-Centered Software Development, the CO-FOSS approach. I'll let him talk to you, tell you more about it, but I've had the opportunity to talk to Alan a number of times. I think we met 2 years ago at SIGCSE. SIGC?
Yeah.
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 And we've been interacting together through this open source group that I'm a part of. He's got some interesting talk. The book is good. I read through the first couple of chapters before I got busy. I'm going to pick it up again at the end of the semester, and hopefully you'll start seeing some of this stuff show up in some of our RCOS and open source software lectures. So with that, Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you want to present your screen, you should be able to do that. I hope. I'm going to jump off.
Give it a shot here. Hold on.
Awesome. There you go.
How's that? Does that work?
Yeah, I am seeing you, but I didn't actually switch over to you yet. Give me just a second.
Okay.
And there you are. We're seeing you, not, so it's your camera.
All right. Yeah. I'm trying to share my screen on this. I'm an old Zoomer, but I'm not very good at this WebEx stuff. So
yeah, WebEx is not the premier. I think it comes from Cisco, and we have some prominent alumni from Cisco, so I think we got a good deal on.
All right, let me see what I can do with this. All right, there's that, and now let's go over to here.
You've got the infinite fractal regression. There we are. That looks
okay. We're making progress here.
Top right, you're looking for present. Well, there you go. You found it.
How's that?
Perfect.
I guess I should start at the beginning. Okay. All right. So, hi, guys. Welcome. Happy to be here today. Happy to join with you, Wes, and your students and your project as it wraps up this semester. I know RCOS a good deal from reading tangentially about its accomplishments and the kinds of engagements that it provides for students doing open source software development for a variety of different clients and interests, and it's all good. I think the RCOS project is a pioneer in open source software development on the education side, and I've learned a lot from that, and I've learned a lot from a colleague at Trinity College who was Ralph Morelli, who I met in 2007, and he convinced me that that if you're going to teach a software development course, you might as well make it worthwhile. Uh, and before that, I'd been doing a software development course and teaching innumerable ways to play solitaire card games and online, and it was getting pretty boring, not only for me but also for the students. So we got real, and we got engaged in HFOSS, which is, as you know, humanitarian free and open source software development. And as time went on, this is back in 2008, I began working with groups of students, not only at Bowdoin College, but later at Whitman College, in a number of projects which were typically populated by 4 to 5 students, and engaging them in developing a particular software artifact, which I'm calling an app here, for a particular client, a single client. So we're not developing these open source experiences. We're not developing a one-size-fits-all type of software. Developing a customized piece of software for a single client and trying to make it work, especially for them, and to replace one of their mission critical processes that are dated in its technology support. And I'll show you a couple of examples of this in a couple of minutes. I call these projects CO-FOSS because of that, because each project is for a single client. It develops an open source software project, typically not from scratch, and what I call from scraps, that is from pieces of other software artifacts that students in previous years had developed for other clients and other applications. So the question is, what kinds of projects were developed by these students? Well, I started at Bowdoin doing this in 2008 with a volunteer scheduling and database application that would help the house, the Ronald McDonald House, keep track of their scheduled volunteers and keep their volunteers self-scheduling themselves on an online calendar. The system has other features besides that, but that's kind of the gist of it. And this application replaced a sort of paper and pencil desk calendar, which I don't know if you guys are alive at this time, but in the old days we had full desk calendars with a full month where you could write a name or a list of names into each date on the month. And that's basically what they are using to schedule their volunteers with. So we replaced all that with an online calendar. And it worked so well that we replicated that process 7 years later in 2015 with a different group of students and customized that for the Ronald McDonald House in Providence, Rhode Island. And then later on, it was morphed again over to the house in Bangor, Maine, and another Ronald McDonald House in Boston, Massachusetts. And so all of these variants of Homebase, of course, have a lot of components in common. And that the very fact that we're working with open source artifacts and GitHub repositories really makes it easy to pull bits and pieces of different software products and reuse them for similar applications elsewhere. This is a typical screen that a house manager or a volunteer sees when they look at the daily schedule for a given month, for a given week. And you can see how the vacancies are accented there. And a volunteer would typically click one of these days if they wanted to put themselves in or take themselves out of a shift. And it's a very, very user-friendly type of environment for them to use. And it gets that old pencil and paper calendar off of the desktop and into a place where it can be shared in a client-server type of a framework. So that the volunteers who are no matter where they are, they can look at the calendar just by bringing up a browser and going to a day and a time slot during the week and updating it appropriately if they have to cancel out of a shift or they have to add themselves into a shift. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye, but this is kind of the basic idea of it. I think this gives you a little bit of feeling for the extent of the application that the students developed. The second example had the same kind of collection of clients. So the Ronald McDonald House is in this case in Portland and in Bangor, Maine. And this application facilitates the scheduling of rooms in the house. As you know, Ronald McDonald houses have as their main mission providing a place to stay for families of children who are in the hospital nearby and either can't afford or would prefer not to pay for a conventional hotel room while their kid's in the hospital. And so the rooms are all pro bono on Ronald McDonald's part, and Homeroom was developed by a different group of three different groups of Bowdoin students in this time period here, 2011 through 2015. Noting in passing, it's interesting to think about the potential for a homeroom, or for Homebase for that matter, either of those apps, for any one of a number of other Ronald McDonald houses in the United States, all of whom have the same mission. And in fact, if you dig somewhat deeply into their operational guidelines, they use the same methodologies and the same protocols for scheduling volunteers and for scheduling rooms. So I think there are a lot of opportunities here for reusing these artifacts if in fact a different group of students and a different instructor in a different college somewhere else decides to reimagine Homebase or Homeroom for their own local Ronald McDonald House. Here's a screenshot for Homeroom, and you can see again that what the array that you see in front of you is a collection of rooms that are either scheduled or available or offline or clean or dirty and in the house at any given day and time. At this particular, I took the snapshot on Tuesday of this week, just so you can take a look at what's going on at the Ronald McDonald House in Portland, Maine. Don't memorize any of these names. I probably to be a little bit more careful, I should have not revealed all these names, but certainly there's no contact information there, so I guess we're safe. So anyhow, if you want to schedule a room that's say clean, like this room 224 or room 151, you click the room, and that allows you to pick from the pending bookings up here. These are the people who are waiting for a room. A person from that list and pop them into that room, and it's a very, very user-friendly environment, as was the Homebase application that I showed you a couple of minutes ago. The third example is one that was done in 2012 by a group of 3 Bowdoin students and myself for a local local food rescue organization called Second Helpings. By rescuing, I mean taking food that's about to expire out of the back end of a supermarket, loading it onto a truck, and then delivering it to a charity like a soup kitchen or a church or someone else that feeds hungry people on a regular basis. This app is called Homeplate. I'm kind of stuck on the word home, I guess, in all these apps, but the idea here is to provide Second Helpings with an online database and a companion Android application that rides the trucks with the food rescue operation and records the amount of pounds of food picked up and delivered at each stop. So if they get 100 pounds from the back end of, say, Publix supermarket, they record the 100 pounds at the time they're picking it up on the app, on the Android app, and the Android app interacts eventually with the server side, and the weight that gets picked up gets recorded permanently. And at the end of the day or the end of the week, management in Homeplate Homeplate office gets a chance to summarize the number of pounds they picked up and delivered at different charities around the region. This is extremely important information for a food rescue operation, which needs to be accountable to its donors and its supporters to tell them exactly how much work they're doing, how many people they're feeding, for example, and how many pounds of food is being rescued from supermarkets that would otherwise be go to the landfill. This software is also GPS licensed, and it was supported by a local software company after it was developed by my students for the first 5 years, and then its support was later picked up by NPFI in 2017. These software artifacts typically don't require a great deal of support because, as we'll see in a minute, they're kind of simple. And so here's a screenshot of the Homeplate application. You can see here the pickups from the different supermarkets and other sources, and these are the drop-offs of the different churches and all the locations where they're feeding hungry people. And over here, the crew is the people who are driving the truck and recording the weights and picking up and dropping off the food. Typically it's a three-person crew for a given route. This is a Buford route for Thursday, April 22nd, last week. Okay. So let's back up a little bit, and now you have a little bit of a sense of what these applications are like. And I mentioned a minute ago that the applications are all quite simple. They all have the same architecture, and they all are licensed by the GPL. And they all sit in their own GitHub repositories. So it's very easy to do a clone and do some customization, and then do a pull request and upgrade the software, or customize, or not do a pull request and just customize the software for a different client. If the client has a very similar sort of collection of needs, functional needs, as the application serves now. The architecture is 3-layered. There's a user interface, there's a database, there's a domain layer. The domain layer is just a collection of classes that reflects the terminology used in that client's own business language. So when we interact with clients, and we'll see what the course looks like in a couple of minutes, we'll talk their language, and we won't talk our own techie language. We'll assimilate the language of the Ronald McDonald House, or the language of Second Helpings food rescue people. So we're kind of meeting them on their own turf, rather than inventing a bunch of technical terms that they're going to have to absorb. The other thing that's common among all these apps is they have this particular collection of languages and systems underneath them: PHP, JavaScript, MySQL, Apache Server, and HTML. And this is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because other variants can be developed easily if, in fact, the people developing the variants are good with this stack. But it's a curse because if people aren't familiar with this stack, if they like JavaScript and other Java, for example, and other kinds of stacks, development stacks, there'll be a whole lot of onboarding required before getting to actually work on the application itself. I wanted to show you a little bit about how the client's own language is reflected in the software. These are the domain classes. You can see there are about 8 or 9 classes here altogether. in this domain, in the Homeplate code domain. The client is the organization that receives the food or donates the food. The route is a series of stops that the truck takes when they run on a particular day. And the volunteer is one of the drivers on the route. And there's several hundred volunteers that actually man these trucks and person these trucks, I should say, over the year. And there's a nice database of volunteers as well as a nice history of database of the history of work actually done over the period of time. And there's a whole bunch of reporting functions that are easily accessed by the management as well as they need to report out to their donors. Okay. Application classes are also domain specific. These are the drivers. There's the team captain. These are the pickup stops. It's a simple array. It's an array of drop-off stops. The status of the route as it goes through different portions, different incarnations of itself as time goes by. You think about today versus yesterday versus tomorrow. You're creating tomorrow's routes so that the system does that. It generates routes automatically. And it publishes them. And when the driver submits the data that they collect during the route, they mark the route gets marked completed. And then the notes is other information about the particulars of what happened during that route. In this particular case, the Android device ID, the start time and the end time gets captured for that particular route. So we know we can audit the history of that route if we need to. So the process is kind of like this. This is probably the second most important slide in the presentation. Prior to the course, the instructor does a bunch of work. They find a client, they gather the requirements, they establish an initial code base from scraps, not from scratch, and as you can imagine from the little overview I've shown you so far, there's a lot of stuff that's shared in common among these different applications. And the instructor creates a syllabus, or what we call milestones in the vernacular of software development. And then during the course, students and the instructor, kind of collaborate with what I've learned is now called onboarding. And onboarding involves getting the students and the project in harmony with each other and getting the students to know the client that they're working with. After that, students go on and test and develop code in labs to meet each milestone, which is roughly a 1 to 2 week period of time. So you get 6 or 7, maybe optimistically 7 milestones met during the semester. Often you can imagine spreading one of these projects over 2 semesters rather than 1, and then you have a lot more flexibility in getting it done. And the students and client actually interact bi-weekly on a regular basis to confirm and get feedback from the client about the degree to which the students have met the milestone. So the students and client get to know each other pretty well by the end of the semester. And then the students make a final presentation, and then when we're done, the instructor actually goes ahead and deploys the product with the client and probably cleans up a bunch of stuff as well. The other part that I didn't even mention here is the instructor hopefully and optimistically finds a software developer who's willing to take over the ongoing maintenance of the product after it's over, so the instructor can go back and teach other courses since they have a full-time day job. There are a lot of benefits to this approach that I've found over the years. The courses I've taught have had very strong evaluations overall. Many of my student alums are now software developers, which is no big surprise. The nonprofit gains a great deal from the effort. They do put some time into it. There's a person from the nonprofit that needs to spend about 2 hours a week for the whole semester, working with the software as it evolves, and also working with the students as they have their biweekly meetings. But clients overall have given strong testimonial also to the effectiveness of this process. So the other byproduct, of course, is that the whole community, especially future courses that take on these kinds of projects, gains a whole bunch of software artifacts that they can reuse, since it's all open source. The most important slide in this presentation is, I finally got here, is the challenges. And I don't want to minimize the challenges, because they popped their ugly head up in 2008 when we started with this stuff. They kept coming back, and they're just as prevalent, I think, today as they were 12 years ago when I started. One is how do you find software developments who are willing and able to provide ongoing support for these projects, for these artifacts. It's obvious that nonprofits don't typically have large technology budgets in the same way that banks and insurance companies and investment companies have. So they're not really there. They're not ready to pay retail developer rates. There are other sources, however, of support for these projects. One is NPFI, and NPFI has as part of its mission to provide ongoing support for all the products that it lists on its website and develops. Another one is a clearinghouse that I've just become familiar with in the last few weeks, and it's called Upwork.com. And my daughter actually introduced me to that a while back, but I had no idea that it could be targeted toward the maintenance of these CO-FOSS software artifacts that we were developing with student teams. There's a bit of this. This is a whole conversation in itself, and I don't want to dwell on it. But it's not turnkey. It's not post a project on the Upwork website, and you'll get instantly a developer project match in heaven that you can just walk away from. It's very complex process to get one of these going, and I'm still working my way through that with a particular project I'm working on right now. The second challenge, not any less important, is to find nonprofits and identifying their software needs. Sometimes I've always used word of mouth, because my wife and I have always had a strong inclination to supporting nonprofit activity, humanitarian nonprofits that have important missions in the world. And my wife has kind of been a leader of that, and she's kind of led me to the Ronald McDonald Houses and to the Second Helpings operation. The other advantage I have, I didn't have the nerve to put this on the slide, but the other advantage I had is I retired. And when you're retired, you don't have a full-time job anymore. You can pick how many hours a week or how many hours a day you want to spend on these things. And I decided to pick a lot, and so I can spend a lot of time recruiting nonprofits and software needs. But this is a conversation in itself too. I don't want to dwell any more on this, because I'm well past my 15-minute allocation. But that's another challenge. The third challenge is of course incentivizing other instructors to take the plunge and try doing it this way, and seeing how it works. Because if it works for them, then it will, I think, provide an incrementally very important byproduct, not only for students who get real live software development experience, like RCOS does, on their resume before they graduate. The other thing is, of course, it helps a nonprofit immensely with providing a new kind of support for one of its mission critical activities. So I don't think I want to say anything more than that because I'm running out of. I've already outlived my welcome. So anyway, here's the book. Wes has already mentioned the book. Here's the link to it. The front material in the first chapter is a free download at the website, at this website here, if you want to take a look. And that gives you a much more detailed discussion of what CO-FOSS is all about. And the rest of the book is, you can get it pretty cheaply. I think something like $20, $22 or something like that if you want to rent it on an electronic version. And then the other one, of course, is to take a look at npfi.org because it will dive you in much more detail into these projects that I've introduced you to today. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. I'll escape this.
Escape.
Okay, I got it.
All right.
Now.
So thank you, Alan. That was really good. I've got a couple thanks for the presentation. That was a excellent discussion of CO-FOSS. We have any questions for our speaker?
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
So first, thank you. That was a really enlightening talk. So a lot of RCOS projects tend to be very RPI centric or passion projects. And speaking as someone who's had a project, it kind of just was a personal side thing. But I think a lot of us at RCOS would really benefit if we were able to do things like this for projects. But I think that second challenge you noted, finding clients, it's going to be especially difficult for us. So I guess, what advice do you have for us as busy students for finding organizations? Or if not the students, I'm part of the coordinator team here at RCOS, maybe what can we do to kind of find those clients for our members?
Yeah, these conversations are going on in this NSF group as well, as Wes knows. And I would say, if you are on campus and RCOS is in Rensselaer, right? The first thing to do is, I know there's a Ronald McDonald House in Albany. And the important thing is to get an introduction, get a foot in the door, and find out if that house has software needs for its room scheduling or its volunteer scheduling, and see if they'd be interested in being part of a collaboration like the one I described. That's one concrete client, and I'll bet if you look around further, you will also find a Feeding America organization in Albany or Rensselaer. That whole Tri-City area. I'm sort of familiar with that because I used to teach at Colgate back in the day, and I think this time of year you're probably somewhere inside of mud season. I don't know, but anyway, I would reach out and find specific organizations such as the Ronald McDonald House in Albany and say, hey, especially if you know somebody, or if somebody in RPI knows somebody whose spouse is a volunteer or knows the house manager or knows the executive director or is a donor, there's a lot of ways to get at these places. The important thing you want to find out when you walk in the door is to make sure that this organization is stable. I've done a couple of projects that I have not bragged about because it turns out we got midway. I was in a project at Bowdoin, for example, and I got midway through the project, and all of a sudden the organization decided it didn't want to do this project. Too many needs for fundraising, and the executive director quit. And we're at spring break, and so we had to finish the project. But you have to have strong assurance that the project will complete on the side of the client. Okay, that would be one important thing to make sure of before you dive in. The other thing, of course, is finding an instructor who wants to take this thing on and lull them to sleep. Does that answer your question?
Definitely. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Anybody else? So I think I'm going to follow up, Alan, with a question here.
Yeah.
We've done so. Well, first off, if we are interested in Ronald McDonald House, that does solve a few problems. One, Alan already has kind of a demo projects that can show them, speak their language, and kind of tell them what we would propose doing. But we've had other people come to us before.
Yeah.
And our problem has been that a lot of the volunteer organizations don't actually have a way to describe what it is they want. Like we had Peaceful Cities come to us, which maintains a meditation website, trying to civic engagement through meditation. We've had Open Hub, which is an organization that tries to promote STEM through open source in the Hudson Valley. And none of them have had actionable requirements. And getting from what they're asking us to something that's actionable is immense.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I understand it very much. And in a sense, you've got to find, you've got to filter out those organizations that are uncertain about what they need or what they want, or even uncertain about their missions in some cases. It's harsh to say that, but some organizations are much more clear about what they're all about than others. The Ronald McDonald House collection is immensely clear about what their mission is. There's no doubt about what they do and how they do it. And there's 300 houses around the country that are doing it in almost the same way. It's surprising that if you walk into a Ronald McDonald House in St. Louis, for example, you'd be amazed at how similar its operation is to the Ronald McDonald House in Albany. I'm absolutely convinced that you can take a room scheduler, a Homeroom, or a Homebase, or volunteer scheduler, and pick it apart and put it back together again and customize it for the Ronald McDonald House in either of those places, and have something really, really customized to the needs of that particular house. They're not the other organization that's a chain like that across the country is called Feeding America. I don't know if you know about that one or not, Wes.
Yeah, I've heard of Feeding America as well. Yeah, a little bit. I'm not as familiar with it as Ronald McDonald House.
And they're kind of a food warehouse operation, and they interact with local food distribution organizations that get food out to soup kitchens and churches and so forth. But they get a lot of their donations from the USDA and from farmers and from government sources. But there's hundreds of those around the country too. And they I think operate from a common template, a common framework for, so they have a clear idea what their mission is too.
Nice.
So I would tend to gravitate toward organizations like that rather than individual nonprofits that whose stability is less certain than the ones that have been around for a while and have a very clear sense of their mission.
Yep. All right. Anything else for on CO-FOSS?
How many people are here?
112.
Wow, super.
Yep. So this is actually one of our smaller meetings, but that's just because it's the last meeting of the semester.
Yeah. I was going to say this is my second largest class I've ever taught.
Ah,
My largest class was at Georgetown back in a long time ago, and I called it my orchestra.
yes.
And it was, I think, 120, but we were all packed into the same room, and that was interesting. Some kids were sitting on radiators.
Well,
This organization seems to be a lot more civilized.
well, once we get back on campus again, you'll have to come in and visit one of our CS1 classes. I'm teaching generally right around 400 students.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what I say every year. Oh my goodness.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. All right.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate your patience and your time. I hope it's been helpful to you.
It has been. It's very nice. Thank you. Let's give our speaker a round of applause. Very nicely done. Let's see. Alan, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can get back to our...
Yeah, stop sharing. Right.
Excellent. Much appreciated.
Okay, I'm gonna hang around for a while just to...
Excellent. That sounds like a very good option from our standpoint. Now let's see if I can figure the rest of this out. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna continue on with our program now. I think if I can get my screen to the front so I can get things going. Well, okay, so hopefully everybody's seeing my screen now.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to give you the attendance code for today. Now that you've attended the important part, we'll let you, I'll open this up. And what we'll do is we will continue on with our announcements while you guys have the opportunity to view this. Let me go here and here. All right, so there's our attendance code for today. Scan it with Venue. We'll post it. We'll post Venue later. We'll post the recording later. Hunter.
Alrighty, so unfortunately you can't see where we are because of the QR code, but
sorry.
that doesn't really matter too much. What it comes down to is we're at the end of the semester. This is the last class, so this is pretty much it. You got a couple more days to do some commits though, so if you've got anything else you want to finish up, you got a little bit more time, but I mean this is the end. Here we are. Perfect. All right, off to Nia.
So yeah, as Hunter just said, it's the last meeting. Members, every project that hasn't presented yet is going to present today. So members should really just think about making their final contributions of the semester. There's one more status update due tonight, and then we want a list of all of your open source contributions and commits by Monday, 5/3. That is like 4 days from today, 3 days from today. So more on that list on the next slide, and feel free to stay and watch the presentations. So yeah, here's the submittee gradable for the final commit summary, and it's linked. And as it says there, the drop dead date is 5/3 because we have to get grading in.
Okay, and just remember that you need to give us explicit links, right? Don't just link to your project. We need to see your commits or links to your commits. You know, if there's 15 of you committing and you committed on, you know, the 70th branch, you know, having us try to find those on GitHub is rife with the possibility of us making mistakes. So please give us some explicit links so we can go in and find them fast and give you the best grade we can as easy as all of us can. All right. I think that brings us to our peer grading. Can we paste these into the chat? One of the coordinators. Remember that we have this up on Submiti. We're also going to put it up on Google Forms, or we're going to have a Google Form so you guys can submit either way. There's been some issues with Submiti getting bogged down while we're grading, so the Google Form is a viable alternative. But let's help us grade your presentations by using the presentation grader. And everybody should grade at least 5 of these.
Okay. You've seen this order before, hopefully. I posted an announcement before the meeting. IARS is up first, followed by Graph. So if you're IARS, get ready to share your screen. Graph, get ready to go next. Again, we ask that you keep these to 10 minutes max, especially now, since I think that would bring us right to the end of our class time, if I can do math correctly.
Yep.
So.
And I will give you a warning at 8 minutes.
So keep an eye on the chat.
I'm going to start sharing my screen, so it's going to stop this. Is that all right?
Please.
Okay. All right. Can everyone see this?
Not yet. Or yeah, everybody can see it, but I don't have it recorded yet. So give me just a sec. Just give me a second to stop